Welcome. You are listening to the podcast A Resonant Life, produced by The Time Is Now Productions. I am Mike Thompson, your host and Reflector-in-Chief. In this podcast, we will discuss experiences and insights from living a life devoted to uncovering the authentic self and finding fulfilling purpose from the past, the present, and the future. This podcast is a product of my life and experience, and I'll share my opinions. Opinions between people are various, and we don't all need to hold the same ones. But it is fun to hear the opinions of others as it gives us an opportunity to freshen up our own. If you enjoy and gain insight from listening, please subscribe and share. If you have questions, please email them. And as always, nothing you hear here is a proscription or a prescription. It is a discussion of life and life's internal and external experiences. So let's get to it. And welcome again. Thank you for joining me today in another discussion tackling our joint project of uncovering our authentic selves and finding the path forward to lives of abiding happiness and to creating a more peaceful world for ourselves and those around us, ultimately for all. So here in Tokyo, it is finally spring. The weather has warmed, the cherry trees have blossomed, and then they gave way to the azaleas, which have now given way to the flowering dogwood trees, and every other flower you can imagine. And soon will be the hydrangeas. We'll get into June with the rainy season. The hydrangeas will bloom. The waves of flowering, flowers, and weather changes remind me that not only do we live with constant change in our environments, but we live in constant change in our lives. And in our lives, some of these changes aren't always what we think of as good or positive. Now, some people are very good at tuning out the shifts and changes and going about their lives without being too bothered or distracted by societal and cultural upsets, by polarization, conflict, disagreements, and turmoil. Maybe they don't even notice or register it. Bless them. Bless them all, truly. I am not one of those people. In my life, I seem to be fine-tuned to the diversity of opinion on politics, media and culture and societal change. I'm overwhelmed sometimes by the polarization in our world, especially by war and violence and any turn toward authoritarianism or by racism, racist violence, misogyny, the abuse of animals and children. It's all horrible. And I'm especially often baffled and distressed by how more and more people seem to be losing a sense of shared reality. We're losing agreement on what is real, what is true, what is fact, what is sort of settled knowledge. So let's name this polarized environment that we find ourselves in. Let's name it noise. And this brings us to today's topic. And today's topic is when all is noise, finding harmony amidst diversity. For myself to recover or rejuvenate, I've tried to disconnect. I listen to and read less news and opinion and focus more on the small things in daily life or reading fiction, things to take me away. I try to pull back from being informed, especially over-informed, as our digital world and social media repeats and amplifies the same news with increased intensity, trying to get that reaction out of us because that negativity is what generates revenue. So disconnecting, dialing back, this works for a time. But inevitably, I'm pulled back. Frankly, it's my nature to be attuned to this. But following too closely the blood sport and conflict mongering that has become 24-hour news and media, it causes me a lot of stress, frustration, and even despair. You too? So what to do? How do I, and all of you, who also despair at the current local global situations, how do we not only remain positive, but cultivate altruistic, optimistic, positive mindsets? That's what we're about here, right? So how do we do it amidst all this noise? How do we expand our hearts? How do we expand our hearts rather than shrinking and cowering, avoiding and hiding and pulling back? We can do this. We have the skills and the experience. First off, if we put into practice our techniques of using things that bring us into negativity or make us aware of negativity as a cue, I use the scenes of despair and being overwhelmed as a cue, for example. And I take a breath, and I step back from the stress, the frustration, and the despair. Take a mental, emotional step back from that feeling of helplessness. I take a step back and I think, here's an opportunity to work on myself and not be pulled out of a mindset of positivity, a mindset of expansiveness and altruism. The negativity is the cue to stepping back and looking and examining. If I didn't do this, if I didn't consciously step back from those feelings, I would become swallowed up in negativity. In that soup of negativity, that's where anger breeds, and resentment, and even hatred of those with whom we have fundamental differences. And as this mindset grows in us like a fungus, we naturally start to pull back from even loved ones with whom we disagree. We argue, quarrel, try to change minds, but usually can't. And then we cut people off. The noise of the world has won. It's beat us. We've not only been beaten by it, we've succumbed. And there we are, angry, depressed, overwhelmed, stressed, and unhappy. So many people today across the world find themselves feeling this way. This is a path of anger and alienation, of hunkering down and shifting into survival mode. There is little room for any happiness, let alone abiding happiness, when we've become so submerged in the noise. There is so little capacity to reach out to help others when we're trying desperately to help save ourselves. Okay, please allow me to change gears for a bit and let me share a personal story, a recent experience where I started down a path that would lead to becoming submerged and lost in the noise. One of my circle of friends is made up of like-minded people. We agree in politics, values, culture, mostly general agreement around all kinds of things. We all sort of share the same basic facts about the events of the day and recent history. In this circle of friends, though, there is one person who does not share all of these same ideas. And so our conversations tend to be delicate and sensitive so as not to raise issues of contention. One day in a group text chat, I shared an historical analysis article that I thought compelling. I thought everybody would find this interesting, that it would kind of spur some conversation. This friend, though, the one he took offense and he called me out and he raised a whole host of contrary issues, none of which I agree with, none of which I believe to be grounded in fact or reality as I experienced it. My initial reaction to this conflict was, I'm tired of censoring myself to accommodate this person. I'm tired of walking on eggshells and not being able to have reasonable, open, lively discussions. I felt exhausted and disappointed and even, angry. So I made a decision. I decided to pull away. Thinking of the conflict which I just triggered, I just decided I didn't want to be in a friendship where I had to hide my honest thoughts and feelings and opinions, where I had to accommodate this other person's reality. There was no common ground between us to have honest conversations, sharing our differing opinions. And so I pulled the plug. I pulled the plug on the friendship. I walked away. We've talked about the Buddhist concept of samsara before. To recap, samsara, basically, life is messy, and we make it messier because we're like sleepwalking zombies crashing around, trying to stay alive, and hoard enough of everything in existence to live forever. We create negative karma through all of this and are stuck in a never-ending but ever-changing cycle. Rinse, recycle, repeat. That's samsara. So a wonderful Buddhist metaphor is that samsara is like mud, the icky, gooey, sticky, stinky mud of a swamp. But a swamp, or a pond, isn't without life or beauty. In fact, the lotus flower grows out of that nasty muck. This amazing, beautiful flower emerges from rank corruption. That is why the Buddha is often described as a lotus, or represented by the lotus. Enlightenment arises from the muck of samsara. Without samsara, there is no enlightenment. It is a dualism, a binary. One leads to the other. Ultimately, if all beings were enlightened, there won't be duality. There will be no samsara or enlightenment or path to enlightenment. What is that? Well, we don't have words to describe, as it is non-conceptual. It's sort of like being there. And anyway, let's get grounded again. So, and it's a bit of a digression, but an important one. It's an important digression. But again, let's get back to where we were. So enlightenment arises out of the muck, like the lotus. In Mahayana and esoteric Buddhism, there are other manifestations of enlightenment. For example, the Vidyarajas, the so-called wisdom kings. These kings are Achala, known as Furomyo in Japanese, Yamantaka, etc. Representations of them are deep blue, sometimes black in color, and this is because they arise out of the mud of samsara. They are also wrathful in appearance, and to Western Judeo-Christian eyes, they look like demons. But they're not demons. This appearance is described as wrathfulness. Think of wrathfulness as a manifestation of tough love, or emergency life-saving love, like a parent slapping a child's hand away from a hot stove so the child doesn't get burned. It appears as an angry action, but is really one that is sudden, quick, protective, and full of love. And that is the nature of wrathful representations of enlightenment in Buddhist iconography and in Buddhism. And as such, they are representations of wisdom. What is wisdom? Essentially, wisdom is doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. So what does any of this have to do with me walking away from my friend, or the noisy, contentious, toxic times we are living through in our world right now? And this is a good question. We, you and me, we are in the muck, the stinky, sticky, slimy muck of samsara. And in a sense, this muck is the noise, noisy chaos. But like the Vidyarajas, the wisdom kings, and like the lotus and the Buddha, we can rise and blossom from this muck, from the noise. So we rise from the muck, the noise, the chaos of our world. We rise as wisdom beings able to do the right thing at the right time, in the right way. We rise, wise, acting with swiftness, and without hesitation. We rise and blossom, pure and beautiful as the lotus flower. Okay, maybe that's a little overly dramatic. So please let me get practical. In almost every episode of A Resonant Life, we've talked about striving to offer help, to be altruistic in our intentions and actions, without distinction or condition. If I walk away from my friends, if I protect myself from people whose opinions are different from mine, even if it seems like we don't even share the same fact foundation, then I am distinguishing and applying conditions. That is not the project. We can't change the rules when things get tough. We need to lean in hard. So I embrace my intention to be of help, to be altruistic, to be a person others can rely upon without condition, without distinction. Okay, how? How do I do this? How do we do this? How do we relate with people who don't even share the same reality with us? How does, in our minds as a visualization, rising from the muck as a wisdom being help us here? There are two parts to this. One, if we visualize ourselves as able to rise from the chaos and turmoil of our worlds, we are psychologically stepping outside of that turmoil and chaos. We are not engaging in it. We're outside of it. Outside of it, we can look objectively. We can suss out the points of commonality, the parts where we can help, whether it's with support, a helping hand, encouragement, positive feedback, a hug, a smile, whatever. With my friend, when we reconnected for a lunch, I found out he'd been silently suffering from some health issues, which actually terrified him. And I was able to be a friend then in that moment, without distinction or condition. We didn't need to agree on politics or culture for me to listen to him. We didn't need to agree on those extraneous things, the noise, for me to listen to and encourage him, and to empathize, as well as share my own experiences with similar health issues. Right? We don't need to be in the noise to be available. We step back from it. The second is to not feel the need to change others. The change we can make, really, the only change we can make, is to change ourselves. And we are changing ourselves to really focus single-mindedly on being available without condition or distinction, and not to engage or react negatively when someone lashes out or expresses a belief, opinion, or thought with which we strongly disagree. We can stand our ground, of course, say that we don't believe the same or agree, but we don't need to attach to the disagreement. We don't need to engage in disagreement. We don't need to argue. We don't need to try to change anyone's minds or bring anyone to our way of thinking. We can't change others. Again, we can't change others' minds. What we can do is share ourselves, our help, and our intention to be a person others can count on. At one point with my friend, after we reconnected, I had to say, I don't really want to discuss that as we have very different opinions and it won't get us anywhere positive. He agreed. And our conversation went back to being actually more intimate and open about personal things. Right? The intimacy, the inner life, this is where we're connecting. Heart to heart, person to person, by being open and available. So, by being available and not engaging in differences of opinion, we are being wise. We are rising as wisdom beings. We are doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way. We are saying the right things at the right time, in the right way. and we can thus make a change impact on those around us, those we love and care for, our neighbors, our acquaintances, despite our differences. This is creating harmony amidst diversity. This is creating harmony out of the noise. When wisdom and compassion come together, peace happens. Buddha moments happen. Momentary enlightenment happens. As we've said, wisdom is doing or saying the right thing at the right time in the right way. Compassion? Compassion is caring enough to be present and available without distinction, without condition. It is caring enough to not abandon a friend, to instead be available to a friend, colleague, family member, acquaintance, even a stranger, to be available with the intention to be of help. In these moments, wisdom and compassion are no longer binary. They are singular and manifest through our kind actions. And these actions change the lives of those around us, change our lives, and change the world. So there is one caveat. Racism, misogyny, violence, domestic or otherwise, these are not acceptable, and we don't need to be passive or disengage or ignore. As people working on becoming authentic and altruistic, we do have a duty to step in to divert, call out, or interrupt those situations. This is the change I can make. The noise of our world, the chaos and muck of war, violence, poverty, disease, sadness and depression, loss, all of that negative stuff is only negative if we remain stuck in it, unaware of our potential to rise above. But it is out of that noise and all those horrors that we can evolve. We can make harmony, and with our positive, helpful, and altruistic intentions and actions, we can be the composers of relief, of laughter, happiness, and healing. We create harmony out of diversity. The Vidyarajas, the wisdom kings of Buddhism, they are guideposts, metaphors, roadmaps, and instructions that show us how to transmute our diverse, multifaceted, complicated world into one that is a Buddhist Pure Land, a world in which we are agents, creators, and promulgators of joy. So let's arise as wisdom beings together, bringing harmony to all those in our world, without distinction or condition. Let's be good friends to all those we meet. Thank you for listening today and continuing to work with me on the project of uncovering our authentic selves. As always, please have a great day, a great every day, and I look forward to our next discussion. Take care. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe and share. If you'd like to share your own experience, thoughts, or ask a question, please send an email to mike@resonant.social. With gratitude, theme music is courtesy of Stock Audios, distributed by Pixabay. A Resonant Life is a podcast from the Time Is Now Productions.